At least 17 children have died after consuming cough medicine sold in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. Police have launched an investigation into the deaths after laboratory testing confirmed the syrup contained almost 50% toxic industrial solvent. For more, we're joined by founder and editor of Mojo Story, Barkha Dutt. Now, Barkha, thanks for joining us on the program tonight. Can you tell us, how did these children die? What did the investigations uncover?
Well, it's really a horrific tragedy. And I think the full scale of the tragedy is still, in fact, being understood and processed. The death toll has now risen to 20. Most of the children are under the age of 5. Some are as young as the age of 2 years old. Many of them come from very poor families, and families have had to really struggle to even get them medical attention. Here's what we know. There is a particular toxic chemical called DEG. And that chemical, the permissible limit of that chemical is 0.1% according to the rules of sort of drug control in India. But in the cough syrups that have been sold and prescribed to the children who have died, this particular toxin chemical was at over 40%. And it has resulted in a direct renal failure, in some cases, a brain damage, and should never have actually been able to pass muster and be manufactured. So, really, the blame lies squarely at the door of the manufacturers, different manufacturers, not just one, and the failure, the failure of the regulators to have got this.
Barkha, what could possibly explain how this cough syrup ended up containing so much of this toxic chemical?
Well, I mean, I can only hazard a guess that this is contaminated. It's made for cheap. It's, bulk made. These are syrups that are often, as I said, used and prescribed in smaller towns of India, in smaller villages. That said, there has even been a history in, a couple of years ago when the World Health Organization actually flagged the death of 66 children in Gambia after cough syrup made in India was actually sent to the West African country. So really, I think this is about just basic safety norms being ignored, callously ignored. I would imagine with one eye on profiteering. When you use spurious ingredients, when you contaminate what you're selling in the market, usually the only reason to do that is to make things in bulk for cheap and not bother to use the chemicals that are actually needed in that medical product.
And
So all for money.
Yeah, there appears to be finger pointing too. There are protests by doctors who are calling for the release of a paediatrician who has been arrested over this case, but they believe that he shouldn't be to blame.
Well, I have to say that I have some measure of agreement with the doctors, not because of any other reason, but because it isn't the doctor who's manufacturing the cough syrup. As long as the cough syrup is available in the market and is not legally there's no legal question mark over that cough syrup, why would a doctor not prescribe it? So in a sense, to arrest the pediatrician who prescribed this cough syrup is to is to go for the low hanging fruit rather than actually get to the root of what's causing this, which is big pharmaceutical companies who are looking to mass produce contaminated products that are, I would go so far as to say, these are designed to kill. This is not an accident. This should not be thought of as a sort of an accident or something that went accidentally wrong. All of these cough syrup bottles contain a toxin that violates that is well beyond, not even 1 point or 2 point, but 40 points beyond the permissible level. How did this happen? Heads should roll. To arrest one single pediatrician is actually laughable. So I have some measure of agreement with doctors who are saying, listen, act where you need to. Doctors will prescribe medicines that are legally allowed.
And what's frustrating and devastating for the families involved is that this is not the first time, as you've mentioned, this poisoning has happened in recent years. So what are authorities saying that they are doing about this?
Well, I think the pharmaceutical sort of industry is now squarely under the microscope, but as are and should be those who are responsible for regulating it, for controlling it. India is a very big country. Every state has its own sort of what's called a drug controller. So yes, this is a sort of behemoth to manage. But as I mentioned, the World Health Organization, no less, flagged spurious, contaminated cough syrups that were not just being made and given to people in India, but were being sent from here to countries in Africa, for example, that needed it. And it led then to the death of dozens of children. It is actually, it's beyond words. I was just saying on my social media platform, we as Indians, we argue so much about everything else. And because in some ways this has not touched our class of people, it hasn't touched the middle class and the upper middle class and the wealthy, the amount of anger and anguish that we need to be showing for this, I think we're not doing enough. It is a travesty that this should happen, that it should happen under the nose of the authorities. And think of it, I mean, all the children are under the age of, most of them are under the age of 5.
And are cough syrups commonly prescribed in India? Are parents generally very cautious about what medicine they give to their children? You'd think that they could just trust that, what they buy in the store is safe.
Well, unfortunately, India is a very sort of believing culture when it comes to the consumption of medicine. And as I mentioned, a lot of these families are not exactly well off. They're not doing their own research. They're not necessarily looking at the back of the bottle to see what these ingredients are. Even if you and I were to look at it, I mean, I'd have to Google this chemical like 4 times. It has, a long name. That's why I use this short form DEG. What I do know is that it's, instead of a 0.1%, these bottles had over 40% of this toxin. But I'm imagining that a family who's taking their child to a doctor will more or less blindly believe what the doctor says. And hence, yes, the doctors have a responsibility. The doctors also should be mindful before they prescribe cough syrups. It's not even a funny story. It's actually it's a very horrifying story. There's a doctor in another state who wanted to demonstrate that cough syrups are safe. And so he actually filmed himself on a video taking a spoon of this cough syrup, and then went for a drive and was found, and fainted, and was found like semi-conscious by the side of the road. So he kind of proved the point that doctors too, while I agree that doctors should not be made the fall guys in this, doctors too have to be mindful about being, basically very happy when they prescribe cough syrups. There's even a school of science that says children under 5 should not be having cough syrups at all. But in India, especially among lower income groups, but even among sort of all groups, people do tend to believe their doctors blindly. And they're not going to be checking the ingredients, and they're not going to be trying to verify the medicine is safe before they have it.
Finally, what action do you think will be taken against this particular cough syrup manufacturer that has proven to be toxic to many children?
So I think that the particular pharmaceutical company based out of the southern state of Tamil Nadu is going to lose its manufacturing license. But I do think that that is not enough, given the fact that we have been here before. And, if it isn't one company, it's the other. I think there is something wrong with the regulation of this sector. There is, I don't know whether it is mismanagement? Is it corruption? There are all kinds of questions in my mind at this point. How do these companies exist? How do they blatantly violate sort of safety norms? In mass producing bottles of poison. There's actually no other phrase that I can use but the fact that bottles of poison have been produced under the nose of the authorities. And in my opinion, it is not enough to shut down one factory or 2 factories. According to me, heads must roll, and the officials on whose watch this happened need to face a criminal action. I do believe a manslaughter case is being prepared, and I think that the sooner that happens, the better it will be.
It really is a concern. Barkha Dutt, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.